If you're over 40 and haven't yet achieved significant wealth, this might feel like a personal attack. After all, you've likely toiled for decades, striving relentlessly for a better life, yet money always seems to slip through your fingers. So tell me, is the problem the world or your mindset? Or what if I told you these 5 steps might be your last real chance to transform your financial and personal life? Would you have the courage to listen until the end? By 40, many have embraced a seemingly harmless but profoundly destructive idea that life is already written, that past successes and failures dictate the future. How often have you caught yourself thinking, "I've tried everything. It's just not meant to be for me"? This kind of thinking is a cage, creating an invisible cycle where the mind becomes its own worst enemy. The truth is, your mind can be your greatest asset or the insurmountable obstacle preventing you from moving forward. It's like having a fertile garden at your disposal, but instead of planting seeds of confidence, discipline, and courage, you're cultivating fear, doubt, and complacency. Why is this so dangerous? Because every thought is a seed. Repeating phrases like "it's too late" or "I can't change" reinforces mental walls that grow taller with each repetition. This is why so many people reach 40 feeling stuck, believing they weren't born to prosper. But science has proven the brain is malleable, capable of reprogramming itself through new thought patterns even later in life. In other words, it's not your age that defines your future, but the quality of the seeds you choose to plant daily. A powerful example is Henry Ford. When he envisioned the V8 engine, his engineers declared it impossible. They presented technical arguments, logical certainties of its failure, but Ford refused to accept their mental limitations. He commanded them to persevere until they found a solution. This mental tenacity, this unwavering belief against all odds, birthed one of the automotive industry's greatest innovations. Now pause and consider, how many times have you stopped trying because someone convinced you it wouldn't work? Napoleon Hill famously said that all success begins as a mental image. Before it becomes reality, someone must believe, visualize, and nurture the idea until it takes shape. This brings us to a crucial point. You must train yourself to see possibilities where you currently see only problems. The habit of asking, "How can I solve this?" instead of, "Why does this always happen to me?" completely alters the quality of responses your mind seeks. I know you might be thinking, life isn't that simple. I have bills to pay, children to raise, responsibilities that don't allow for dreaming. This is precisely the trap. Daily routines, financial obligations, fears, they're all real, but they shouldn't be the sole lens through which you view life. Because if you let them, these worries become a permanent excuse. While you're busy putting out fires, your mind never creates anything new, never opens space for solutions that can transform your reality. Another essential factor is repetition. You didn't learn your name because someone told you once, but because they repeated it thousands of times. Similarly, to master your mind, you must repeat new beliefs until they become natural. This isn't about self-deception, it's about reprogramming. Psychology calls this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to remodel itself throughout life. At 40, 50, or 60, it's still possible to change deeply ingrained patterns. Napoleon Hill experienced this firsthand. During the Great Depression, Franklin Roosevelt called upon him to help communicate a message of hope to millions of desperate people. Hill knew the first battle wasn't economic, it was mental. If people believed they were defeated, they'd never have the strength to rebuild. And from this mindset, Roosevelt's famous speech was born. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. This proves how the mind dominates reality. So if you look at your financial life today and feel frustration, understand this. It's not the lack of opportunity that holds you back most, but how you interpret those opportunities. Every time you think, "It's too late," you close a door. But every time you think, "How can I transform this?" you open a path previously unseen. Mastering your mind isn't a theoretical exercise, it's a daily practice. It's consciously deciding to plant seeds of faith, discipline, and courage until they grow so large that there's no room for the weeds of doubt. The big question remains, what have you been planting within yourself in recent years? Because if you've reached this point without the results you desired, Perhaps it's time to change the seeds, not blame the soil. After 40, a common mistake traps millions in the same cycle, setting goals that are far too small. The comfort of low-level aspirations seems safe, but this very security suffocates any real chance of prosperity. How often have you set a goal merely to pay this month's bills, without thinking about building something that truly changes your life? Such goals keep you alive, but they don't make you grow. The truth is, goals that don't give you butterflies are unlikely to bring about transformation. Studies by Edwin Locke and Gary Latham show that specific and challenging goals consistently improve performance far more than simply telling yourself, "I'll do my best." It's the discomfort that awakens a level of energy that would otherwise remain dormant. The problem is, out of fear of failure, most people prefer not to try. And therein lies the trap. Avoiding fear is also avoiding great victories. Consider Thomas Edison. He endured thousands of failed attempts before inventing the electric light bulb. An ordinary person would have given up after so many setbacks. But Edison treated each error as information, each stumble as a stepping stone. Had he chosen a smaller, more comfortable goal, he might have spent his life improving candles and oil lamps, never altering the course of history. This demonstrates how a goal large enough to scare you is also large enough to force you to evolve. Now consider the opposite. Blockbuster, a video rental giant, had the chance to reinvent itself when Netflix was still in its infancy. But its executives didn't dare set a bold goal of adapting to the digital world. They clung to the comfort of their existing profits. And you know what happened? The company vanished. This proves that failing to be bold also has a price, and it's often the highest of all. There's a simple technique that can multiply your chances of achieving any goal, transforming desires into concrete plans. Research by Peter Gollwitzer shows that creating implementation intentions, that is, defining exactly when, where, and how you will act, significantly increases the probability of success. It's not enough to say, "I'm going to save money." You need to define every Friday, as soon as my paycheck arrives, I will transfer 10% to savings before spending anything. It's this clarity that makes the brain work in your favor, a harsh truth few like to face. You probably already know what you need to do to change your life, but you don't do it. How many times have you decided you'd wake up earlier, save money, start that project, take care of your health, only to postpone it? Lack of discipline separates those who achieve from those who only dream. And at 40, when routines have become ingrained and habits deeply rooted, this challenge becomes even greater. But it's precisely at this stage that discipline ceases to be optional and becomes the difference between spending the rest of your life complaining or finally achieving what you've always wanted. Most people wait to be motivated to act, but motivation is like the wind. It comes and goes without warning. A study by University College London showed that on average, it takes 66 days of repetition for an action to become an automatic habit. This means you can't depend on momentary inspiration. You need to build consistency until the behavior becomes part of who you are. It's discipline that transforms effort into identity. Here's a point few realize. Every time you give in to laziness, you're training yourself to quit. Likewise, every time you do what you need to, even without wanting to, you strengthen the muscle of discipline. It's like at the gym. The first repetition is difficult, the second too, but with consistency, the body adapts and responds. With the mind and habits, the process is identical. The world is full of wasted talent because people didn't know how to maintain discipline. Think of Mike Tyson, who reached the pinnacle of boxing at a young age. But because he didn't control his impulses and self-destructive habits, he lost not only his fortune, but also part of his reputation. This shows that talent without discipline doesn't sustain success for long. On the other hand, we see examples like J.K. Rowling, who wrote Harry Potter as a single mother, facing financial hardship, but committing daily to writing, even without guarantees of success. Her discipline transformed an idea into a global phenomenon. Napoleon Hill always argued that discipline is the bridge between desire and fulfillment, and he proved it in his own life. When Andrew Carnegie challenged him to spend 20 years interviewing the most successful men in the United States, Hill received no salary for it. He could have given up in the first few months. After all, it was arduous work. with no immediate return and full of uncertainties. But his discipline in persevering, even in the face of scarcity and criticism, is what allowed the creation of one of the most influential works in the history of personal development. The crucial question is, do you control your habits, or do your habits control you? At 40, many people have surrendered to autopilot. They wake up late, spend hours on social media, spend money thoughtlessly, eat poorly, complain about their boss, and repeat everything the next day. In the end, they don't realize that this negative discipline also produces results, but results of frustration, stagnation, and lack of perspective. Discipline exists either way. The difference is whether you'll use it for or against you. The good news is that discipline can be trained, and it starts small, sticking to your wake-up time, resisting an impulse buy, completing a task without procrastinating. These small acts accumulate strength until your mind understands that you're someone who keeps their promises. And when this identity takes hold, discipline ceases to be effort and becomes natural. So the question for you is simple. Do you want to continue letting life push you around, always reacting to circumstances, or are you willing to take control of your habits and, consequently, your destiny? Because the difference between those who become wealthy and those who spend their lives complaining rarely lies in talent or luck. It almost always lies in the silent discipline of doing what needs to be done, even when no one is watching. After 40, one of the most dangerous traps is believing it's too late to change your environment, that the people around you no longer significantly impact your life. But the truth is, consciously or unconsciously, you continue to be shaped by the voices, attitudes, and patterns of those you spend time with. If you spend most of your time with people who constantly complain about the economy, who say that getting rich is only for the lucky, who believe that just scraping by is enough, you'll inevitably start absorbing that worldview. And whether you realize it or not, these ideas silently seep into your thinking and ultimately define what you believe is possible for yourself. That's why Napoleon Hill emphasized the power of your circle of influence so much. For over 20 years, interviewing men like Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and Alexander Graham Bell, he noticed that none of them reached the top alone. They all had people close to them who inspired, challenged, and held them accountable. An environment of excellence didn't tolerate mediocrity. Now consider this. Who are the 5 closest people in your life today? Do they challenge you to grow, or do they justify your stagnation? Science confirms this influence. A study published in the New England Journal of Medicine showed that habits like obesity, smoking, and even financial behaviors tend to spread within social circles, almost like an invisible virus. In other words, if your group spends recklessly, complains without acting, and constantly self-sabotages, the probability of you adopting the same pattern increases dramatically. Similarly, when you're surrounded by disciplined, focused, and determined people, that behavior becomes natural for you as well. This brings up a sensitive point. Often, the people closest to you, childhood friends, family, colleagues, won't understand your desire to grow. They'll say you're dreaming too big, that you should be realistic. But in reality, they're just projecting their own fears onto you. That's exactly what happened to Oprah Winfrey. She was born into extreme poverty, surrounded by people who didn't believe she had a future. But she chose to seek mentors and surround herself with people who thought bigger. The result was a multi-billion-dollar career, built on the courage to replace negative influences with voices that believed in her potential. Of course, this doesn't mean abandoning everyone around you in a cold or arrogant way. It does mean being selective about who you share your dreams with and where you invest your energy. It means understanding that if you want to build wealth and achieve fulfillment, you need to connect with people who have already walked that path or are at least on the same journey. A simple study group, a mentor, a colleague who's a few steps ahead can accelerate your progress in ways that would be impossible alone. And if you think you don't have access to this kind of circle, remember, the world is more open than ever before. Books, online courses, digital communities, lectures, all of these can connect you with more elevated minds. Napoleon Hill didn't have immediate access to Andrew Carnegie. He started small, interviewing people in his area, until an opportunity led him to the billionaire who changed his trajectory. It was a sequence of intentional decisions to seek out better people until he himself became a reference point. What you need to understand is that energy is contagious. Have you noticed how leaving a conversation with someone extremely motivated leaves you feeling lighter and more willing to act? And similarly, have you felt how being around someone negative drains your energy in minutes? This isn't a coincidence. It's how our brains mirror the emotional states of others. And after 40, you don't have time to waste absorbing energies that pull you down. There comes a point in life when you realize you've read, studied, heard advice, and even dreamed a lot. But none of it truly served you because the one thing that keeps the wheel turning was missing: action. After 40, this weight becomes even greater because each passing year intensifies the feeling that time is slipping through your fingers. How many times have you felt inspired after reading a book, watching a video, or attending a lecture? But the next day you return to the same routine as if nothing had changed. It's this gap between knowing and doing that keeps so many people trapped in mediocrity. The biggest mistake is waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting to have more money, more time, more energy, more security. But the reality is that the ideal moment never arrives. Life will always have uncertainties. There will always be bills, children, responsibilities, and unexpected problems. And that's precisely why those who prosper learn to act amidst the chaos, not when everything is aligned. Great achievers didn't wait for guarantees. They started insecure. They started without knowing everything. They even started with fear. The difference is that they started. Science shows that this is the key. Studies from the Harvard Business Review indicate that people who act quickly on an idea, even imperfectly, dramatically increase their chances of achieving concrete results compared to those who wait for more clarity. This is because action generates real information, and information generates adjustment. While you're planning, thinking, and waiting, those who act are already learning, correcting, and moving forward. Napoleon Hill experienced this painfully. When he accepted Andrew Carnegie's challenge to interview the greatest geniuses of success, he received no salary. He had a family, he had responsibilities, and he often faced hunger and debt to continue his research. But he decided to act, even without the guarantee that it would work out. This courage to move forward, even in uncertainty, is what allowed him decades later to transform all that knowledge into the book Think and Grow Rich, a work that has impacted millions of lives around the world. Imagine if he had waited for security first. Probably no one would ever have heard of his work, and when you look at recent history, you realize that this is exactly what separates those who achieve from those who fall by the wayside. Steve Jobs didn't wait to have the perfect office. He started in a garage. Jeff Bezos didn't wait for e-commerce to become popular. He started selling books online when almost no one believed it would have a future. And on the other hand, how many talents have been lost because they eternally waited to be ready? How many ideas died on paper because they were never put to the test? Therefore, what you need now is not more information, but a concrete step. Something small, perhaps, but real. Sending that email, starting that business, cutting an unnecessary expense, enrolling in a course, initiating a project you've been putting off. The size of the action doesn't matter as much as the fact of acting, because when you move, even imperfectly, the universe begins to move with you. And here's a challenge. What's one action you could take today, right now, that would change the course of your week? Not tomorrow, not after the holiday, not when you get paid. Today. Because your life doesn't change in the future. It changes the instant you decide to act. What will differentiate the next few years of your story isn't another video watched, but the decision to get up from your chair and transform knowledge into movement. And if you truly believe you still have a chance to become wealthy and live something greater, that chance only exists in the exact moment you decide to act. It doesn't matter if you're 40, 50, or 60 years old. What will define your future is not the time that has passed, but the choices you decide to make from now on. Every change begins within your mind and materializes in action. If you've absorbed this, you're already far ahead of most people. And to continue this rhythm of evolution, I want to invite you to watch the next video, which is already appearing on your screen. In it, you'll climb another step on your journey of wisdom and become 1% better than you are now. Thank you very much for being with me until now, and I'll see you in the next video.